Hello, I'm Adrian. Happy New Year to you all. And traditionally, this is a time for resolutions and plans. And I'm sure many of you are thinking about ways that you'd like to improve as guitarists over the coming months. So a couple of years ago, I actually did a more general video on practice routines and how to practice. This video is going to be more specific, and I've got a quite random selection of 10 guitar exercises which you might like to add to your practice routine, and that I hope will help you become a better player this year. I've got a range of different things here. Some are easy, some are hard, some are just fretboard gymnastics, some have a bit more musical value than that. But what's the point of these kind of exercises, you might ask? And I think that's a valid question, and personally I think this kind of thing can be very helpful, but you don't want to overdo it. I think the priority should always be working on actual music, but if you supplement that with some wisely chosen exercises, I think that can really help make you a better player. And this is not about becoming a shredder or a chops meister, unless of course that's your kind of thing. It's more about having enough technique to be able to play the kind of music that you want to play. And I'm also a big fan of this idea of technical headroom, and it's the idea that you've got a bit more technique than you're ever likely to need, and that just makes you a more confident player all round, I think. Now, I'm not suggesting that you work on all 10 of these exercises. I think it's probably going to be best if you just select one or two, add them to your practice routine and see if they work for you. Let's kick off then with what is probably the best known guitar finger exercise, commonly known as the spider. And for some reason, all of these finger exercises need to be named after insects. Not quite sure why that is. Is a spider even an insect? I'm not sure. I'm going to get furious comments from naturalists saying, a spider's not an insect, it's an arachnid. Is a spider an arachnid? I'm pretty sure it is. Anyway, if you can get over the fact that this exercise sounds completely horrible, then it can actually do some great things for your playing. It's great for your fretting hand, your finger strength and independence. Really good for your picking hand, for developing alternate picking technique. And it's great just for keeping both hands really synchronized. And it's the kind of exercise that I used to do quite a lot when I was a young guitar player trying to get my chops together. So there are lots of ways you can approach this exercise, lots of variations on it, but the way I tend to do it is this. I'm going to start on the low E string. We've got 4 notes on each string, 1 note with each finger. So I'm starting at the 5th fret, and I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm just going to move it down through the rest of the strings. And when you reach the high E string, you can either reverse the fingers and descend, or what I tend to do is to move 1 fret higher and then descend, but I still keep the order of the fingers the same. So I'm still going 1, 2, 3, 4. So. And then you can keep on zigzagging up the fretboard. So go up 1 more fret. And so on. So that's the basic idea. I suggest you start slowly and make sure that your technique is good. Make sure that each note is really clear and crisp. Make sure your timing is good. It's a great idea to get the metronome out, because not only will that keep you in time, it's also a good way to measure your progress as your technique improves and you gradually just push up the metronome speed. And another thing I'm really big on with this exercise is efficient technique and minimum movement. I'm not actually holding down any of the fingers when I'm doing the exercise. That is an option that you've got. But I prefer to release pressure when I've played a note, but to keep the movement in my fretting hand very small, so there's no wasted energy. And a similar thing with your picking hand, just very small, precise movements of the pick. So once you've got the basic idea, you can try changing the order of fingers, and there are lots of possibilities here. And because I'm a nerd, I've figured out all of the possible finger permutations. And you might like to just select 1 or 2 of those. In particular, it's a good idea, I think, to select the permutation that you find the most challenging. So I might select something like 3, 4, 2, 1. That's quite a tricky one for me. There are many more variations on this basic spider exercise. You can try spreading some of those permutations across a pair of strings, or you can get string skipping involved. But this exercise is actually a favourite of mine. And the idea is this: we're going to start with 1, 2, 3, 4. and then one at a time we're going to move our fingers over to the next string. So starting just with the first finger, that's going to move to the A string, and the other three fingers are going to stay on the low E string. And then we're going to move the second finger over as well. So we've got 2 notes on the A string, 2 on the low E string. Then the third finger comes over, and the little finger remains on the low E. And then finally, all 4 fingers arrive on the A string, and then we repeat the process. So 1, 2, 3, 4 on the A string, and then we drop the first finger, the second, the third, and the fourth, and so it continues. And then we can reverse it, and with this one I do tend to stay in position and I reverse the order of my fingers. So I'm going to go 4, 3, 2, 1 on the high E, then I'm going to move my little finger up to the B, and then the third finger joins it, and the second finger, until we've got all 4 fingers on the B string, and then it continues the same kind of fashion with the other strings. And once again, strict alternate picking in your picking hand. But what's so good about this exercise is that the picking is much more challenging than the basic spider exercise. If you think about it, with the basic spider, even if you're getting into all of those different finger permutations, the picking hand is still doing exactly the same thing. It's always just down, up on each string, which becomes a bit predictable. Here we've got a lot more string crossing involved, and the picking is much more challenging and much more useful, I think, for developing your technique. Next up, I have a stretching exercise, which is great for improving your flexibility and reach with your fretting hand. And quite a few of these exercises are actually akin to torture on the fretboard, and this one in particular is like having your fretting hand stretched on the rack. So attempt this exercise at your own risk, and in all seriousness, don't injure yourself whilst doing this. The idea is this: we're going to start up in the 12th position, and the whole exercise is based off of this little diagonal chord shape. I've got the 12th fret on the high E string, and then 13 on the B, 14 on the G, 15 on the D, and I'm going to strum that chord shape, and then I'm just going to move one finger at a time lower down the fretboard. So I'm going to start by moving my first finger from the 12th fret down to the 11th fret. Strum that little chord shape. This is another horrible sounding exercise, I'm afraid. Then we're going to move the second finger down, and the other fingers are just staying put, and then the third finger comes down, and then finally the little finger comes down from the 15th to the 14th fret. So we're back with that same diagonal shape, and we're just going to continue the process. So the first finger moves, then the second, and the third, and the fourth, and then obviously the lower you get down the fretboard, the more you're going to be stretching. So it starts off fairly comfortably, but quite quickly it gets to be a real stretch. Until you get down to about the 3rd position, and this is where the pain really starts to come in. See if I can go down to the 1st fret. Ooh, just about starting to get a bit messy and a little bit painful too. And seriously, with all these exercises, you don't actually want to be in pain. I think a little bit of a stretch is fine, but you don't want to strain yourself or worse. And if you want even more punishment, you could try the same thing, but have your fingers on the other diagonal like this. let's have an exercise that focuses on strengthening the little finger, or pinky as our American friends like to say. And I still occasionally get outraged comments from people moaning that I don't use my little finger enough. And call yourself a guitar player, call yourself a teacher, you never use your little finger. And it's true, I tend to favour my stronger fingers in most situations, but I'm certainly not an advocate of having a weak pinky, because there are certain situations where you just have to use it if you're stretching or if you're playing something that's a little bit complex. So this exercise is a really good way for strengthening up this little guy. So it goes like this. It's another spidery type exercise that's crying out for a good insect-based name, so suggestions are very welcome. And I'm starting at the 5th fret on the low E string with my 3rd finger, and then I'm playing the 6th fret on the A string with my pinky. And then I'm doing the same thing but going over to the next pair of strings, so the D and the G strings, and then finally doing that on the top pair of strings. And then we're just going to move up 1 fret and descend. And then we do the usual spider zigzag thing. So it's a tough and a valuable exercise because it's forcing you to use those weaker fingers. And as a variation, you could just flip the orientation of those 2 fingers like this. As with all these kind of exercises, start slow, make sure you're playing accurately and cleanly, and you can gradually build up speed. But a really good one for targeting those weak pinky muscles. So after all those horrible sounding exercises, how about something a little bit more musical? And I really like scale-based exercises, things based on sequences and intervals. And the first thing I'd recommend is doing some major scale sequences or major scale interval exercises. And in fact, I've done an entire video on that subject, so I'm not going to repeat myself by going over that again now. But you can apply these kind of patterns to just about any scale, and more advanced players might like to try this kind of thing with some more unusual scales. So why don't I take you through some interval exercises based on the melodic minor scale. So I'm going to be using the A melodic minor scale. I'm just going to play through that in intervals. So you can start with thirds. Moving on to fourths. And fifths. And sixths. And finally, let me try sevenths. There we go, hard. Again, great for your technique and picking, but also good for just getting your ear around some more unusual sounds. So we've done a lot of picky type exercises. What about something for your fretting hand strength? And this is another scale-based exercise, but it's a legato exercise. So we're going to be using lots of fretting hand hammer-ons and pull-offs. It's based on an A major scale with 3 notes per string that looks like this. And these kind of scale shapes are perfect for working on your legato playing. And it's a very simple exercise. We're just going to pick the first note on each string and then hammer on the other 2. So pick, hammer, hammer, and then move that across, and then move it across again. And then we're going to go back one string, so back to the A string, and then do the same thing. So 3 strings worth of hammer-ons. And then go back one string to the D. And then back one string. So up 3 and back 1 is the basic sequence here. And when we get to the top, we're just going to reverse that and we're going to descend with some pull-offs. So, and this time it's down 3 and up 1. Basic idea. So I'm whizzing through it there a little bit, but it's really not about speed. It's much better to start slow and make sure everything is really under control. There's a definite tendency with legato playing just to let your fretting hand kind of spasm away, and you end up with this kind of that kind of sound where it's all lumpy and uneven. What you want to focus on is getting every note nice and even and crisp. Here's an arpeggio based exercise, and this one has got plenty of added music theory goodness, and it's actually giving you some tools which are very musical and that you could actually use in a solo or in some improvisation. So based off of this C major scale, just a simple pattern 1 C major scale, and playing 4-note 7th arpeggios taken from the key. So the first of those arpeggios is going to be a C major 7 arpeggio. And then we've got a D minor 7, then E minor 7, F major 7, then G7, and A minor 7, and then B minor 7 flat 5, and then we're back to C major 7 again. So we just harmonised the C major scale and come up with those arpeggios. And the actual exercise is this: you could just play those arpeggios ascending all the way through, but what I like to do is to play the first one going up and then the second one going down. So I'm going up C major 7 and then descending D minor 7, and then up E minor 7, then down F major 7. And then we've got the 5 chord, the 5 arpeggio, so we'll go up G7, and then down A minor 7, and then we've got B minor 7 flat 5 going up, and then C major 7 again coming down. And I like to descend all the way down, and then you can repeat the exercise one more time. It's a great exercise, that one. Alternate picking all the way through. Make sure you're staying nice and accurate with that. So this next exercise, it barely qualifies as an exercise actually. It's just a skill that I think is worth working on. And it's something that I want to work on in my own playing because I feel that it's a little bit of a weakness. And it's simply fast downstroke picking in rhythm guitar. And it's something that crops up a lot in the kind of music that I listen to, and it's something that beyond a certain tempo I find hard to keep even and relaxed. So to work on this, I think the best thing to do would be to take a song or a part of a song that contains some fast downstroke riffs. So it might be something punky. It could be a Ramones song. It could be God Save the Queen by Sex Pistols. It could be something metal. I mean, take a Metallica song, Master of Puppets has got some incredibly fast downstroke picked riffs in it. So take something like that and then work on building your speed, maybe with a metronome. And you're going to want to concentrate on staying relaxed at those fast tempos. So I'm going to take the song Los Angeles by punk band X, and it contains a fast downstroke picked main riff. And it's the kind of tempo that is right on my limit, I think. I can just about play it, but I'm not totally comfortable or totally groovy when I'm playing something like that. So the riff is this. It's just power chords A, G, D, and then C. And I'm going to start slowly and just going to concentrate on minimizing tension and just staying nice and even. And then over the course of a practice session or over the course of multiple practice sessions, I'll use the metronome just to monitor my progress and to kind of push me up to my limit and then beyond. Let's have another groove-based exercise. And one of my favourite ways of working on rhythm and working on groove is to do some funk exercises. And this particular exercise is based on 16th note funk groove, and it's all about learning to feel and to place those 16th note subdivisions. So we're going to hold down a chord. It could be any chord, but I'm using an E9. And I'm going to establish a 16th note groove in my strumming hand. And then the idea is I'm just going to squeeze down that chord shape to highlight each of the 16th note subdivisions in turn. So I'm going to start by just squeezing that chord down on each beat. So and then I could move to the next 16th note in the beat. So if you're counting 1 E and 2 E and this is the E of each beat. So we've got and we'll move the 16th note accent along by one more 16th note. So now we're halfway through the beat. We're on the and. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then finally we can move the 16th note along to the last 16th note subdivision of each beat. So the 1 E and So and then you can try putting all of that together as a continuous exercise. I recommend getting the metronome involved as well. And that would sound like this. I'm just going to play one bar on each of those subdivisions, although you could stretch that out and make it a bit longer on each of them if you'd like to. So So there we go. If you want more of this kind of thing, I've actually done a video called something like Funk Rhythm Guitar Workout, where I go into a bit more detail on these kind of ideas. So I thought I'd save the most challenging exercise till last. Now the idea here is we're going to be using the major scale to play through all 12 keys. We're going to be starting with the C major scale, got 4 beats in the key of C major, then we're going to be moving to the next key by going anti-clockwise round the circle of fifths. So we're going to be moving into the key of F major, 8 more notes and so on round the cycle. So really it's as much of a mental exercise as it is a physical one on the guitar. You're really going to need to know your major scales, you're going to need to know the notes in those scales, the sharps and the flats, and you're going to need to know how to find those notes on the fretboard as well. So let's have a go. So I'm going to try and keep all of this in and around the 7th and 8th positions on the guitar, starting in the key of C major, and I've got 4 beats or 8 eighth notes in the key of C major, starting on the root and ascending. So just C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Then I'm going to move to the next key, which is going to be the key of F, and I'm going to continue ascending. I want to smoothly go into the new key. So the next note is going to be a D, and then E, F, G, A. I know that the key of F major has got a B flat in it, which is there, and then C, D. Those are my eighth notes in the key of F major. Moving to a new key, and once again going around that circle of fifths to the next key, which is going to be B flat. So I could go up, again continuing ascending. I hit this E flat note here, and at this point I'm running out of room, so I'm going to descend at this point. So I've got the E flat, I'm going to come down the B flat major scale, so D, C, B flat, A, G, F, and E flat. Those are my eighth notes in the key of B flat, and then I'm just going to continue the process going round the circle of fifths. So I'm going to go into the key of E flat, A flat, D flat, etc. So let me just see if I can put all of that together for you. So I'm going to start in the key of C major, key of F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, E, A, D, and G. And then you could go back into the key of C there and go round again if you wanted to. So obviously that's a tough exercise, not one for beginners, but if you do know your major scales and your major keys, then it's worth having a go at this exercise because it's a very powerful one, a really good way of thinking quickly when you're moving through different key centers. And I played it through the circle of fifths. You can play through any key centers with this kind of exercise. Quite a good idea is just to play it with some random key centers, and that really gets you thinking. That's it for this video. I hope you find some of these exercises interesting and helpful. I will of course be tabbing all of this stuff out and putting it up on my Patreon page. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you stick around for some more videos this year. I've got lots of interesting things planned. I shall see you next time. Bye bye.